Simcha, Simcha, the celebration of life.
Hi from me, Jared Epstein, bringing you another episode of Simcha, a celebration of life, again from my house during lockdown. Kimberley's Barney Horwitz is one of only 3 remaining Jewish lawyers who until recently were practicing in the interior of South Africa outside of the main cities. He is also the chairman of the Griqualand West Hebrew Congregation and the chairman of the Small Jewish Communities Association. We met Barney to find out more about growing up Jewish in Kimberley and his involvement in the community.
Born in Kimberley, I went to school here at St. Patrick's College, Christian Brothers College. I went to Rhodes University, and in those days I did national service in 1 Special Service Battalion, Bloemfontein. I'm an attorney. I was admitted in 1981. My father was an attorney, and so is my daughter. And between my father and myself, we have been practicing attorneys in South Africa for 74 years. There were many Jewish lawyers in Kimberley. I would say there were probably around 10 to 15. Everyone always wanted a Jewish doctor or a Jewish lawyer. They have great faith that suddenly they would be inspired and their case would go a lot further. And something about Kimberley that is fairly unique in South Africa is that Jews were here right at the beginning. Amongst the first diamond diggers. So we've had 6 Jewish mayors. The library was started by Jews. The art gallery, which is well worth a visit, was started by Jews. And my grandfather arrived in 1896, came to South Africa illiterate, taught himself English from the old Singer prayer book, started out life as a smous, selling brooms, ended up life as a professional gambler, playing poker for a living. Growing up as a Jewish person in Kimberley was a good experience. And Kimberley in 1961 was not very different from Kimberley in 1910. So the whole diamond era was still very much alive. We had 2 kosher butcheries. We had a full Jewish life. And I remember going to shul as a very young child over Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. And in those days, there were 150 families and children were standing room only. And last Friday night, I found the prayer book that I had been presented with. It was an old Hertz prayer book for my bar mitzvah, and we used it on Friday night when we said Kiddush. I lead a very small community. In 1996, the then elders of the community decided that we would not last beyond the year 2000. And, well, 24 years later, we're still here. We still function. We have a beautiful shul. I'm the chair of the Baal Tefillah duties. There are 2 of us that are able to lead the services. During the year, Friday night, Saturday morning, it's either myself or another member of our community, Barry Katz, that take the services.
We're very close. We used to come to shul every Friday night, Saturday morning with a gentleman by the name of Goldie Mel, who died a few years ago, but he was a very religious person. And when the services stopped, Wanya and I took it upon ourselves to join Goldie because he was Shomrei Shabbos. And then in the latter years of Goldie's life, he couldn't come to shul, so we went to his house and held a service, Barney and myself. And that allowed us to become very close friends, that we were able to support somebody who needed to have a service, especially a Shabbos service, and yes, Barney and I stood by him. So yes, when I think about that and I think about where we are now, we used to bring chairs into the aisle so that we could sit. The shul was chock-a-block, and when you come in now on a Friday night and there are 3 or 4 people, you look around and you actually wonder if that was the way it was, but it was. Very sad.
The future for Kimberley Jewelry is difficult to predict. On the surface, it's probably bleak, but find one diamond mine and it will change dramatically. I am a small community person. I've always felt that you have an incredible knowledge of your own identity. And in a small community, it's one big family. It's not a mass movement. And you also have a lot of time to experience spirituality, which you wouldn't have in an enormous community. Other than that, remember that Kimberley is a provincial capital. So as leader of the community, I do have a wider persona. I am recognized by provincial government. I do serve on the Premier's Education Trust. And in addition to that, I'm also the chairman of the Board of Governors of the local Catholic school, which I attended. And the first member of my family to go to that school entered that school in 1906. And my last child left in 2015. And between 1906 and 2015, there were only 13 years when there wasn't a Horwitz in the school. One of the more interesting experiences that I've had as a Jewish leader in Kimberley was one year I was invited to the opening of Parliament. And I arrived at the venue and it was packed. It was absolutely jam-packed. And I thought, now, how do I get through this crowd? I thought, no, put a yarmulke on. I put a yarmulke on. The Premier's security descended on me. Rabbi, please join us. And I've always said to visiting people, and they'd say that it takes so long to become a rabbi, and I've said, no, it doesn't in the Northern Cape. Just put a yarmulke on your head.
My dad is the best person that I know. I've never met anyone who is more proudly Jewish and who's more like consistently proudly himself. I think there's a lot of people in the world who may not be the same as they are at home, as they are on the streets. But I think his Jewish values and who he is as a person is the same wherever he is. And I think what he does for our community is just absolutely incredible.
Jews in the smaller centers, by necessity, are very involved in the broader community. And I take my cue in this regard from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, the former Chief Rabbi of England, who always says there is a middle way. And I believe very firmly that we're supposed to be the light to the world, and that we have an enormous amount to offer within the broader community. And when you live in a small community, you are respected for being Jewish, and you're also respected for the leadership that you can bring.
Last year, Kimberley hosted its first Jewish wedding in 40 years, when Ida Horwitz and Zach Lieberman tied the knot in one of the oldest surviving communities in South Africa. Ida shared her experience of this special day.
I got involved with Habonim like fairly later on in my life. I guess a lot of people go to camp from when they're 12. But that year, I worked in Chetz, which is like creative arts. So you run whatever creative stuff for kids. At the time, I was still doing my drama degree. And Zach he was working in the kitchen. In his words, as a kitchen drudgeon. And we were friends for a very, very long time. And then we got married. So, I mean, it worked out. It was a lot to take on. But it was just so meaningful. I can't explain. There was an electricity in planning, sometimes not great electricity, but there was just it was amazing. What is the biggest distinction between having a wedding in, say, a big place like Joburg and a small place like Kimberley? Is really what I learned growing up. We are a family, and any simcha, any chag, it can be the smallest thing, is an opportunity to be together. And also, because a lot of people traveled to be with us, there was even more excitement. Everyone had to get on a plane or get in a car or whatever, and everyone who was there were waiting for another opportunity to be together as a Jewish family.
It was a major undertaking because we had to provide kosher meals from Friday night through to Sunday. It was logistically a major undertaking.
One of the funny things, more hair-raising things that happened was our caterer used GPS to get to Kimberley because they'd never driven there, and Google Maps took them on this roundabout route. And I get this phone call from my caterer, like, there's a lot of potholes on this road. And I was like, where are you driving? Because you have every plate and every glass that we are going to be using in your trailer. So, and we got the cake in Johannesburg. And one of my bridesmaids physically had to hold the cake the whole way. And she had this thing in dry ice, hoping that the 3 tiers wouldn't fall over. And they also got detoured on this bizarre route through Hertzogville. So there was those little things.
One of the interesting things was this. We took out the chuppah, the tent under which you get married. And we couldn't work out how this thing stood, because every time we put it up, it fell down. And then I spoke to one of the old timers, and he said to me, there used to be 4 holes in the floor that you put the poles in, which held it up. But when they put the carpet in, they hid the holes. So we had to work out a new solution, which we eventually did with drums in sand, and we painted them, and they looked really great.
And I'm very lucky because my husband's family could have, said, no, it has to be in Joburg because their whole family are from here. But they were so cool to get on board and just gooi and have a wedding in Kimberley. And the whole weekend that we planned, everything, it was exquisite.
We had 160 people here. Most of my family from the States, the UK, came out. and Zach's family from Australia and the States and Israel came out. And we had 3 Orthodox rabbis presiding, Rabbi Silberhoft, Rabbi from Chabad on Grant, Rabbi Roddel, and Reverend Matzner.
And what was really special was at the wedding, so Reverend Matzner had some really special insights into my husband and his thoughts and how he learns and how he connects. And it was really special because we had 3 people who knew us.
It was a fantastic event for my family. There was a spirit there which would be very difficult to recapture. We had the reception here in the Kimberley Club. My fear was that the wooden floors would not take the horror, but they did.
To have the opportunity to be able to get married in the shul that I was, like the community I was born into, and the fact that it was open and that we could facilitate that. I can't explain. It was like a dream come true.
"2020 has indeed been a time for deep thoughts on everything we do. A perfect time for Chief Rabbi Warren Goldstein to continue his ethics series with us. This week, he talks about love and work.
Here's something that you may be surprised to hear comes from the writings of our sages. A very short statement, 2 words, but it captures so much about human nature, and it's something which has such a crucial message for our times and for our society. Very simple words that come from Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, that say, love work, Ehovet HaMelacha, as it says in the Hebrew text of Pirkei Avot. What does it mean to love work? Why should we love work? Surely work's just a means to an end. And there's a very, very profound insight that our sages are sharing with us about the concept of work and the dignity of work. And it is a message which is so compelling for South Africa today. Because what the commentators explain is that work that enables a person to earn an honest living is absolutely crucial to the very idea of human dignity. Every human being needs to be able to earn a living to support themselves and their family. Because what our sages explain is that for a person to have to take charitable donations is an infringement of their dignity. And let me be clear, charity, or what our sages call tzedakah, which actually comes from the Hebrew word tzedek, which means justice, because giving to the poor is not just about a charitable act, as the English word charity implies, but it's much deeper. According to our sages, it is a fundamental principle of justice for those who have resources to help those who do not. And it's such an important mitzvah to help the poor. But ultimately, when there is a handout, when a person who has gives to someone who doesn't have, that in itself is inherently undignified. And that's why we have so many laws in the Code of Jewish Law and Shulchan Aruch that are there to preserve the dignity of the recipient. That ideally, the giver and the recipient shouldn't even know each other. That's a much higher level of charity than when they can see one another. So that there should not be the sense of indebtedness and the sense of subservience from the giver to the recipient. But ultimately, what every person needs to strive for is to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. And that is why, according to our sages, the very highest level of charity is if you can give a person a job or involve them in a partnership in a business or enable them or empower them in some way to be able to earn an honest living. That goes to the heart of human dignity. And that is one of the most important moral challenges facing South Africa today. It's not just a question of the politics and the economics of it. The moral state of a nation where there are so many people who are unemployed and who are unable to support themselves and do not have the dignity of work is a moral issue for all of us, and we have to apply our minds to think how these problems can be solved, how the unemployment rate can be reversed. But there's something else that our sages share about work. It's not only the dignity of being able to support yourself, it is also about being productive and constructive. Because what our sages explain in the Talmud is that if a person has too much empty time, that is not filled with good things, with constructive, productive contributions to the people around, to society, to God, with mitzvahs, then that emptiness brings boredom, and boredom brings a sense of spiritual disconnection. So this is a fascinating concept, this idea of boredom, because we have an entire leisure industry in the world, which is there to fill time. And of course, every human being needs leisure time. We need it to recharge ourselves, and we need it to be able to be fresh again. But what is so important is that our lives should be filled with constructive and productive things, and that means work, it means investing in the relationships around us, it means doing good, it means helping others, it means being involved in making a difference to the lives of others, being involved in mitzvahs, in good deeds, in serving God, contributing to the community, building family. We should be occupied all the time with that, because that's where we connect with who we are as human beings. God has created us in His image. We have a soul from Him. That soul reflects His greatness. And when we connect with our souls and we are constructive and productive and making a difference to the people around us and filling our lives with wonderful, good, creative endeavors and initiatives, that fills us with a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose. And that meaning and purpose is a powerful driving force in the life of a human being. And so what they were saying is not only love work, because that is the key to human dignity, and without work and without being able to earn an honest living, human dignity is assaulted. But also what it is teaching us is that we, on a much deeper level, need to be people who are actively contributing, doing mitzvahs, making a contribution, living productively and constructively. And through that, we will find the deepest sense of satisfaction and personal fulfillment.
That brings us to the end of this week's episode of Simcha, a celebration of life. As always, we'd love to hear from you, so please send us a Facebook message at Spirit Sister Productions. From me, Jared Epstein, and the Simcha team, here's a fun fact. Did you know that the big hole in Kimberley yielded 2,722 kilograms of diamonds? That's a lot of bling.